Actually, it's funny when you say that because I think today my problem, and maybe this is ego speaking, but I am so tenacious about things. There are things that I feel like any idea I have, I'll make it work to some degree. And that's a problem because you could put all your effort into really getting a really good idea and you get it going. So when do you know you got to cut bait when this is not a good idea anymore?
Yeah, I approach it somewhat differently. I'm not a believer, despite the terminology, that an idea is the key. Right. And the thing is, ideas, in my opinion, are so transient, right, and that you do have a great idea and you do try it and there's a glimmer and it brings you to the next idea. Right. And so the way I think about it is I try not to fall in love with my ideas. I try and fall in love with my problem.
Okay.
In other words, when I see something wrong, that's what I want to learn everything about, and that's the thing that I'm like a dog with a bone about.
Right.
And I'll give up on the idea in a second, but then I won't give up on trying to solve that problem.
Right. And a lot of you probably don't know, Marc is actually a big direct response marketer. And so when I was reading your book and I learned that about you, I love this guy, and well, you hear that. That's what marketers do is we test things. Like, you have an idea for a marketing campaign or an offer, and you don't really know anything until you test it, until you put it out there, have it, like you say, collide with a customer. How do you think having that direct response marketing background in mail order, the old school marketing, right? How has that helped you as an entrepreneur?
It's been immeasurable. There you go. I didn't mean, no pun intended.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievably influential in my career. And my first 20 years, I was a direct junk mail guy. I mailed millions upon millions of direct mail pieces. I started 2 catalog companies, so I did so many packages, so many catalogs, so many techniques that way. And I was also in magazine business. I started 2 magazines. And a lot of that is subscription business.
Right.
So and especially in the direct marketing part, mail part, there's a lot of personalization involved. And so you begin going, here's a guy who mailed millions of things, really cared about personalization and subscription business, huh? So in a lot of ways, those seeds that eventually became Netflix, they were planted 20 years before right, I was ready for them.
Right.
But the important thing is there was that discipline of saying everything's measurable, that every single thing I can do, I want to understand what worked and what didn't work. Mm-hmm. And when I saw the internet coming along, and this is in 1995, when someone finally said, let me show you something, and installed the Mosaic browser on my computer, it blew my mind because I immediately saw that all the things I'd been doing the old-fashioned way, with catalogs and mailing pieces, could be done so much more effectively online.
Right.
But it's that discipline of saying measure, measure, measure.
Right.
That was huge for everything we did.
As a CEO, it helped you and so forth, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
And I'll just remind, if you guys have questions, you can start lining up at the mics. There's 2 in the room here, so just go ahead and you can start that line up. And while people are doing that, let me ask you another question. In your book, you mentioned that you're really good at knowing what customers want. And a lot of people say that you have to listen to your customers, but how do you really do that research? Is it surveys? Is it one-on-one conversations? How do you know?
So, I'm in the partnership between Reed Hastings and myself. There was a yin and yang, and I was absolutely the externally focused one. That I do think I have a pretty good sense of, I call it remote empathy, which you learn from being in direct marketing, okay, where you say, I'm going to mail a piece of envelope to somebody, and they're going to open it up in their house 1,000 miles away, but I've got to imagine what they're going to look at first and what they're going to feel and what they're going to read. And once the internet came along, I realized there's much better ways to do that. Mm-hmm. And I began realizing that the best way for me to really know what a customer wanted was to figure out a way to collide my actual idea with them. And so it sounds trite, but it's very hard sometimes when you have a more sophisticated product, mm-hmm, to figure out what they do, in my opinion, is so much more powerful than what they say.
Thank you for saying that, because you're right, because I've had people, so I've run conferences like this, and they'll say to me, I've had people come to a mic and say, you know, Robin, I think the marketing, it's just a little hokey, I'm not sure it's gonna work, and it's like everybody in the audience will laugh, because it's the marketing that got him there.
Yeah, exactly.
He's standing here at a mic as a paid customer saying, I don't think this marketing works, right, to a full room. And you're right that customers, when you poll them and you ask them, they'll say one thing, but you know, ask them when you put an order form in front of them,
yep.
and then you'll really see what they're interested in.
So let me tell you a really quick story. And this is pre-internet. So one of the magazines we were launching ended up becoming Mac User Magazine. And we knew there was an opportunity for a second Macintosh magazine when the Macintosh was just out. But we didn't know what to focus on. Do we focus on creative arts? Do we focus on accounting? And we could have surveyed, we could have done focus groups. We would have gotten people telling us what they wanted. But instead, what we did is we created mailing pieces for 16 different magazines that looked like we had already been in business. Like there'd be a shot of like 12 covers, all faked up. And one would be a magazine, and they'd go, here's an excerpt from articles. And we'd sent these mailing pieces to all these different groups of people and seen which one got the most subscribers, real subscribers. And of course, then we picked the one that had the most subscribers, and the other 15, we'd go back to and say, I'm sorry, we have some excuse for not being able to fulfill the order. But wow, if they put their money on it, it was a very, very hands up about that is the thing that we want to move forward with.
Right, absolutely. And then one other question before we'll go to audience questions. But just talk about managing chaos, because when you're in a startup or even like in a small business, there's not one thing you can focus on. How do you manage that?
Well, just to make this an interesting conversation, I would disagree with that. So I think one of the most important skills for a small business person or an early stage business person is a combination of triage and focus. And in a startup, it's the nature of the beast that you have 100 things that need doing. And you have fires burning and things calling out for attention. And I genuinely believe that that critical skill is recognizing of these 100 things that are wrong, of the 20 of them that are on fire, what are the 1 or 2 or maybe 3 that if I get those right, the rest won't matter? And recognize that if I focus all my attention on 1 or 2 of them, that's a much more powerful thing than trying to run around spinning all the plates.
Gotcha.
It's really hard. It's that focus, and when something's going crazy, but if you get the one thing right, it'll lift all the boats. At least that's in my my experience.
Great, no, great answer.
So I don't want to cut against something you've been teaching everyone else to do.
No, I don't think, I mean, I think you're right. It's something that everybody struggles with. And sometimes when you're overwhelmed, you tend to pick something simple and easy because you get a sense of accomplishment. You get a feeling of, okay, I know I can do this and can get it done. You feel a little bit better. And sometimes the most important things are like the big, hairy, ugly problems. And you kind of almost don't want to deal with it.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it's so great when you're overwhelmed is to clear your head. That's the time to go for the walk. That's the time to go for the long bike ride. It's to back away and go, I'm dealing with things as they're coming to me. How do I figure out what's the really important thing that I have to get done, even if it is the one like is apparently impossible.
Right, exactly. Great. Okay, so we'll go to audience questions now.
So you mentioned that there are 3 criteria you think are most important for a successful entrepreneur, and the last one you mentioned was confidence. Do you think that that was something that was innate to you, or it was something that you developed over time? And if it was something you developed over time, how did you go about that?
Ooh. So I think it's a combination of both. I do believe that people can learn to be better entrepreneurs, but they can't learn it, in my opinion, from classes, from reading. You learn it from doing it. And I was incredibly fortunate that I had the opportunity it's by nature, I see the world as an imperfect place, and I can't help but take these problems and want to solve them. And at first they're small. I mean, this is not like starting a business. This is like in school, starting a club, or launching a magazine, or putting on a musical. I mean, you have to go figure it out. And it's the same model. There's 100 things you have to do. What are the 2 or 3 most important? You have to convince a group of people to follow you into this apparently irrational venture. You have to recognize, how do I make do with 1/10 of the resources that everyone else says I need? But you're doing this at a small scale. And it's the same thing if you're a business. People think, I want to immediately launch this new initiative, but I can't because it's too big. Then the skill is, how do you chunk it down and take a first step and at least begin feeling the water and seeing whether the initial assumption that might be a market there is correct.
Very good.
So effectively make things feel manageable and then go from there?
Yeah, I call it the biggest flaw that people have. This is not early stage entrepreneurs. This is any business person, is they have an idea and they go, wow, I think there's a big market for me here. And they do what I call building a castle in their mind, is they have the idea and they begin nurturing it in this very safe environment where, of course, everything works. And they imagine, oh, it'll get big, and then think of the synergies, and then we can do this and this. And then by the time they're ready to start, it's huge and expensive and requires 500 people. And of course they can't do it. So it's this discipline to go, as soon as I have the thought, I go, is there one customer that I can go and pitch this to? Is there one way I can add this little piece on to give me a hint that this market I think exists does exist, or that the brand that I've built would give me credibility in this space? But if you're thinking, to launch this new venture, I've got to hire people, do the advertising, office space, you'll never do it because you won't ever have enough confidence for that. But you will have enough confidence for that first step.
Thank you.
Yep. Smallest viable test.
Yeah, I'll give you one more little thing. So what crushes companies of your size is this, what I call it, with the one-size-fits-all decision making. And all of us have types of decisions we have to make, and there's 2 different types of decisions. And Jeff Bezos calls these one-way doors and two-way doors. And the one-way door is, just pick one, something like, for example, credit card data. Changing to how you handle that is a one-way door, because if you open the door, you walk through, and the door slams behind you and it's wrong, you are screwed. And so that's a decision you have to make sure you get right. Lots of research, lots of testing, so that when you step through, you know it works. But there's also two-way doors where you can try something and you can step through and go, whoa, and step right back. Mm-hmm. The reality is that most decisions are two-way doors, but companies become accustomed to making one-way door decisions, and then all their decisions, all their people, all their culture is a one-way door culture. And that paralyzes you.
Right, and you're right, because even in marketing, I get the question, what's the one campaign I should do? And I'm like, just pick one, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You send out that email and somebody gets angry at you, or there's no response. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And a lot of people are paralyzed by that. They feel like if they test something, and if it's not a home run, then I'm not going to do it. And your idea is just to put it out there, and that's the direct response marketer, I think, because that's the way I look at it. I mean, you always try and think it through and go, well, we hope it's going to be right, and we think it through. We're not just throwing anything, but sometimes the things that you think would work the least work the best, and vice versa. So you just don't know.
And it's being scared to try things that, for example, a lot of companies are scared to try things. Let's say you're trying to figure out the right price point. You go, I can't test this low price point because everyone else will freak out. And so you never test the low price point. But then you let some other company who has no baggage come in with a low price point, and boom, before it's too late. Someone else is coming and stealing your business.
Yep.
You want to find out in advance. You want to be the one who finds out that you're not doing something correctly.
Right.
And if you're scared to try it, you're just leaving yourself in the same position that every big company. Go look at the Fortune 1000 from 30 years ago. It'll blow your mind how few of them are still there.
Right.
And that's what you can look at it. There's an opportunity, but there's also a warning.
Yes, exactly. All right, we'll go over here for the next question.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. Thanks. This has been really great. I've been a loyal Netflix subscriber for 20 years. And so my question is, 18 years ago, I sent you an email.
I'm getting to it. I'm a little backlogged.
Because I had a great idea, and I said, you're doing these subscription DVDs. You should also be doing subscription Xbox and PlayStation games. And my question is, why didn't you ever do that?
You can delete that email now. You don't
I
have
can
to
give
worry
you-
about,
There's two reasons, and I'll give them both. The broad reason is focus, okay? It's the Canada principle, and if you actually read the book, it's your assignment, you'll learn in more detail about the Canada principle, but the Canada principle is that people are always saying, why don't you expand into Canada? That's a 10% instant bump in your market. It's easy. And you go, well, it seems easy, but it's a different currency, there's different language, there's different postage, different currency. I mean, and you realize that low-hanging fruit rarely is. But more importantly, you go, the 10%, the effort it would take to go into Canada, if I turn that effort back to my core business, it'll reap a reward way bigger than 10%. That's the general principle that gets applied to almost every suggestion that we should go after this adjoining market. The specific answer is that, have you ever seen, when was the last time you saw Shawshank Redemption? Ever seen it? Yeah. How long, when did you last see it? A few years ago? Yeah. It's a 20-year-old movie. You're still watching it. What's the game you were playing 20 years ago? I rest my case. The life cycle of a game is extremely short, and the consumption of a game is extremely long. I mail a movie out, you watch it in 90 minutes, and you mail it back. And then I can still do that for 20 years. A game, I mail it out to you, it comes back 3 weeks later, and within a year, no one wants Madden 7. They want Madden 60 or whatever they're up to at the time. That's the detailed answer.
Perfect. Okay. And we'll make these the last two questions and make this a little quicker.
Awesome.
Okay.
So again, absolutely wonderful. Thank you. A few years back, I recall that you guys did a price increase from when it was still being mailed. It went up like $1 or $2. And I recall in my neck of the woods, that was a pretty big deal. I mean, it was kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe Netflix raised their rates $2 or something like that. I'm assuming that was kind of more of a national kind of a thing that you guys decided to do across the pond, or across the entire country. Did you analyze that? Did that actually cause issues that you say, well, maybe we shouldn't have raised it $2? Maybe, I mean, you're talking about testing the market, but that just seemed like, how did that go? How did you guys make the decision?
So I can't remember, of course, a specific in-the-room decision there, but I can answer it that you have a person who spent 20 years before he got into Netflix as a direct marketing guy, where every single thing I did, I decided in advance, how am I going to measure the effect it has, and then how am I going to deeply analyze what the results were. Everything. I wouldn't breathe without analyzing something I was doing. And then you pair me with a computer scientist and a mathematician. And Netflix was metrics obsessed. And this is back before you could just, Looker is the most recent, before you could just buy Looker, or before you could get Optimizely, or all these easy tools for doing incredible things, and you all should be using this stuff. We had to do it ourselves. So we absolutely knew not just what the impact would be on acquisition, we knew the impact on retention, we knew the impact on consumption, we knew the impact on 20 different metrics, short-term, long-term. It was absolutely done extremely deliberately. But if it's the time I'm thinking about, just a matter of months later, Blockbuster announced their all access and dropped the price to $14.95. And then it goes, well, screw the tests. We've got to go where they're going. So, you can't be testing with your head in a box. You have to be doing both things at the same time.
Right.
But we knew for sure exactly what we were doing.
Great question. Yeah. This will be the final question then.
Marc, excellent. It's great to hear you. My question is more of a perspective on things. Looking at what you've done Netflix in your career, do you have a concept of failure? Because I see optimism, to me, optimism is just, you always move forward. It doesn't really matter what the decisions are.
Yeah, I don't have I'm not, there's this huge failure porn thing going on where everyone goes, you have to fail, and if you don't have a failure in your, screw that. Who wants to fail? The thing that you have to be, the reason it gets talked about so much is that you can't let the fear of failure paralyze you from moving forward. And so that's clearly a motivation for anyone who's trying new things, is that you just don't want to be scared. But the reason I don't really, people always ask, what's your biggest failure? And I can't think of one because there's so many. I mean, as I described, you know, when you just Netflix, just one of 7 startups, between when we launched and when we finally figured it out, it was a year and a half. And I probably tried, I don't know, 1,000 different things, and 999 of them didn't work. You know, they had glimpses. You know, you tried something and you, oh, wow, it would inform you. And so if it doesn't solve the problem, it gives you a glimpse of where to go. Is that a failure? No. But is it a success? No. So that's why I don't have that. I can't answer the question the same way. My mind doesn't work like that because nothing's binary that way. All these things, all your ideas are bad. I guarantee it. That's the nature of ideas. I've never met a company, maybe yours is different, that where the idea you start with is what ultimately makes you successful. It is a path. Yeah. And your job is not to pick the one idea and fight like crazy to make that one idea work. Your idea is take your idea, accept it may not work, try it, and learn from it. Your job is to figure out why isn't it a good idea and begin the path. Yeah. And that's it. Simple as that. Yeah. Next thing you know, IPO.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, going back to even the direct response marketers, I've often said we don't have failures, we only have tests. So, I mean, and I think that's kind of how you think. You have an idea, you hope it's going to work, but you don't know until you put it out there, and then you learn something, and then you either learned it worked, or it worked a little, or you got a better idea, and that's the navigation of growing a company. Because you're right, if you're the same company you are today as you were 10 years ago, you probably don't even exist, or you're so small, right? You know what I mean? Because it's always a discovery. I got a new idea, launch this, let's see how it goes. Let's see, I mean, I know you're really close, and you work at High Point University, and Dr. Nita Cobain, and he always taught me, you got to have 5 or 6 balls rolling downhill because 2 or 3 are going to be completely failed, 1 or 2 will be okay, and 1 will be a success. And then you take that one and you do 5 more. So it's always that process.
It absolutely is. I mean, I showed you the 7 companies, and one of them was such a disaster. It was torture. But that is what really informed almost everything we did culturally at Netflix. So, surprise, it was actually a huge learning thing that fundamentally went toward the success.
Exactly. Well, all right. Well, we are out of time. This has been fantastic. What do you guys think? Mark? Yes? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.